Good afternoon, everyone, for joining us. This is Melinda Colby. I'm Senior Director in Office of Information Technology for Marketing, Communication, and Events. We're thrilled to bring you another virtual event. This one is one of our typical lunch and learns. So I hope you have had time to grab lunch and have it sitting in front of you and are not waiting for us to be sending by delivery, Grubhub delivery, your lunch to you, because unfortunately, that's not part of the deal. Would love to be able to, but just not part of the deal. But glad that you're able to join us anyway. We probably will be rebranding these in the near future to Know and Grows in the interim time while we are still in this COVID-19 remote work situation, so that it won't be a little bit misleading there. But we will continue to provide you with some opportunities for professional development. Thank you again for joining us. We're very, very fortunate to have one of our presenters that would have been here back in April for our Office of Information Technology, our Innovation and Technology Summit. If you remember, we brought you someone a couple of months ago from Gartner, and we are now bringing Lori Burris, who was going to be one of our speakers at Summit, to this virtual event. So Lori is with us today to speak on innovation in higher education. Just a little bit of background about Lori. She has the coolest title in the position that she's in, the Education Innovation Consultant for LinkedIn Learning. She is known as a thought leader, a speaker, a coach, and a writer on teaching and learning. She is an adjunct professor and professor emeritus for interaction design in Pasadena City College, and a digital media director for the State of California Chancellor's Office. But before I turn it over to Lori, I want to mention a couple of other things that are on the, first of all, I want to acknowledge our co-sponsors. So our co-sponsors for this are our McDermott Library and our Educational Technology Services. So we currently are showing on the screen some of the training and support opportunities that are available through e-learning, our Educational Technology Services, and we wanted to showcase some of those for you. So they have their contact information there, as well as some learning opportunities that you can take advantage of. And then we also have, for the Office of Information Technology, some upcoming events with our Teams tips and tricks that we've been offering. We've been doing the Teams tips at 2 on Fridays. I do want to mention that there has been a rescheduling of the one for tomorrow. So we neglected to get that off of this slide, and those who had already signed up for it have already received that information. But we have some others that are scheduled, and we will be offering some more into the month of August as well. So you have some opportunities there to continue to find out more about our Microsoft Teams migration and the telephony migration, our Exchange Online migration. So with all of that, I again want to welcome Lori to Dallas virtually, and to thank her for joining us. And with that, Lori, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
I hope you can all see my screen. I'm going to go into present mode. I'm so excited to be here. For me, it's mid-morning, it's brunch time, and finally it's cooled off a little bit here in California, so we're excited about that. I'm going to get right into what we're going to be talking about today so that we have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And just a reminder that you'll get a PDF of the deck with all the links to the things that I'm showing you, and you can always contact me by email after if you have questions as well. So in 2009, I took a leave of absence from my full-time tenure-track teaching job at Pasadena City College. I left higher ed, where I worked and taught inner design, in fact, the interaction design program, to go to 2 years full-time at a fast-paced internet technology company, then called lynda.com, what we now call LinkedIn Learning. And on the first 3 months there, I had 3 big ahas that occurred. First, I was witness to active practice of questioning, observing, networking, experimenting. And I saw numbers of the employees who were failing or clueless as how to do these things. Second, I realized what business wants is a track record that demonstrates discovery skills, possession of expertise in one knowledge area, and breadth in a few, and passion, a passion to change the world and to make a difference, an expectation of excellence. 3, when I looked up innovation in colleges and university programs, it appeared mostly in business school course listings. However, it's not just a skill set for entrepreneur programs, but it really runs across all jobs and all parts of today's 21st century global organizations. So like a good academician, I went to the dictionary and I looked up the word innovate, and defined it means to go into the new. And often it's really helpful to look at the antonym, and in this case it's stagnant. If you're not changing, you're not innovating. So who is an innovator? How would you define this? We know, for instance, if the CEO is an innovator, the company is more likely to be innovative. Disney was the consummate innovator. He termed it as being a cross-pollinator, the stimulator. In the book, The Innovator's DNA, the 3 authors, Dyer, Gregerson, and Christensen, who recently died, examine how businesses look at innovation. The term innovation DNA is the discovery quotient, or an index of a company's performance currently with a look to how it will perform in the future. It's really about weighing 2 factors, the ability to be innovative now and in the future. It's based on both looking forward and historical performance. In this study, they conducted interviews with 500 plus innovators, over 5,000 executives in over 75 countries. The book itself has an in-depth profile for determining a person's innovation leadership profile. The profiles of top innovators, leaders like the likes of Dell, BlackBerry, eBay, and Intuit were compared. And note, the non-innovators are the black line at the bottom of this chart. But the innovators, those CEOs I just mentioned, they are high in observation, hovering around 85 percentile. In association, 100 percentile. In questioning, 95. In network, they're a little bit more diverse there. And experimenting is lower, but well above 50%. An innovator, according to the book, The Innovator's DNA, is a person with infectious curiosity who is interested in discovering how we can provide ever more delightful experiences to improve our lives. A creative catalyst, an advocate or coach, a facilitator of an innovation philosophy and processes. And it occurred to me that this description closely resembles the role of an educator, a trainer, a team leader, a manager, a faculty member in a 21st century school or workplace. But most importantly, an innovator has a vision that people can get behind. For example, the Think Different campaign inspired people, inspired a change of culture. When Steve Jobs returned for a second time to Apple, he commented, "The whole purpose of the Think Different campaign was that people had forgotten what Apple stood for, including the employees." And I thought, if you don't know someone very well, you ask them, who are your heroes? Our heroes are innovators. We stand for innovations. If you want to work at Apple, we expect you to be an innovator who wants to change the world. I'm going to stop for just a moment because my dogs are at the door and I'm going to put them in the backyard. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I had them corralled in another part of the house, and I didn't think that they would break through. Now I've got them.
Lori,
can you hear me?
Before you continue, can I
Yeah.
double check? I think we're getting a little bit of information that has lost your video feed, where we can see your slides, but cannot see you.
That I don't know about. I'm in front of the camera, but I promise I'll be back on the video feed at the end.
Okay. Okay.
That's a technical thing I can't help with. Sorry about that. So sorry about that, guys. So how would you rank your innovative DNA? Just give me a thumbs up if you feel like an innovator, and hopefully Melinda can tell me how many people are raising their thumbs right now. I mean, you should be asking yourself things like, am I good at generating innovative ideas? Do I know how to find innovative people for my organization, my team, my class? Do I know how to train people to be more creative and innovative? Do you think of yourself as an innovator? So Melinda, maybe you can help me out here and see how many thumbs go up here.
Let's see.
Lori, just to clarify, this is Amanda, just to clarify for those of you attending, it's in the live event Q&A. There's a post that says, do you consider yourself an innovator? If you'll go in there and like that post, if you consider yourself an innovator, then we'll be able to give Lori an accurate count from the audience.
Yeah, I didn't want to let you off the hook and just passively sit there.
That number is ticking up. We're at 11.
And how many people are in attendance at this moment? Total.
Right now we're at about 60 attendees.
Okay, I'm going to give it like 30 more seconds, and then Melinda, you can tell me what that is.
Okay.
That number is. Okay, I'm ready to hear what our number is. It doesn't matter if we don't get a.
Okay, 26.
26. And you know, I have done this for many audiences, and my guess is usually it's going to be around 30%. I've done this in front of 500 people, 100 people. I've done it at Columbia University, and generally the audience, about a third of them think of themselves as innovator, which I'm always surprised at on campuses because I think of educators as being really innovative people. So if you're not sure what type of innovator you are, there are many quick online interactive surveys to determine your innovative role. I'm a conceptual scout, all about the ideas, needing new frontiers, making connections across disparate ideas, observing customers and learners in action, and knowing their drivers. I'm interested in new ideas that use creativity to solve practical problems, or what I call an innovation realist. My team at LinkedIn Learning laughed when they saw these results and said, this describes me very accurately. Now, I've actually given this test to many of my students and to some of the new younger employees at LinkedIn, and they generally come out as experimental scouts, people who are willing to take risks, where I bank on my past experiences. So next, think about what you would consider to be the world's most innovative companies. And Melinda, you can guide them of how to do this. They can write your answer in chat, or if you've got that question Q&A, you can put what those companies' names are in that area.
Okay. Yes, the question is in the Q&A section. In your opinion, what are the most innovative companies out there? Type and submit your responses, and then we'll begin to read them aloud. Waiting to see some responses. Anyone?
Nobody knows what name an innovative company. I'll have to make Melinda guess.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give you one. The first one that comes to mind for me is Google.
Google, that's one that comes up all the time.
Yeah. And then I of course I also think of Amazon.
Amazon comes up all the time. Anybody writing in that chat yet?
See.
If I were live, I'd be giving you presents. If I could only give you presents, you'd all be raising your hands.
Amanda, are you seeing some additional ones?
Yes, we've had a few coming in. Looks like there was a little delay, but we've got Apple, Tesla, Amazon, Dyson, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Tesla, Facebook,
Perfect.
Oculus VR, Apple, Microsoft, Dell.
And that's exactly what I would have said before I read this book, because my knowledge of what's an innovative company is based on what I know their historical performance has been. But I'm going to remind you again that the innovation DNA is also a projection of how innovative that company will be in the future. And so here's from the end of 2018, the innovation DNA done by Forbes with the that group that I mentioned earlier. And as you can see, Apple and Google are nowhere on this page that I'm showing you. Salesforce is there, Amazon is there, Facebook, you guys named Tesla. Nobody said Netflix. So there are some really unexpected ones up here as well. And they're probably not ranked in the order that you thought. You probably thought that somebody like Amazon or Facebook would be ranked 1 or 2. But there's also some very unusual things, like look at number 18, Amore Pacific. Amore Pacific is actually a South Korean company committed to fostering innovation and advancement in beauty science. They have a unique open innovation model that invites partners from all over the world to propose new ideas, encouraging opportunities, and they tap into cultural and geographic knowledge along with cultural collaboration. They have a respect for the traditional Asian ingredients and the knowledge that goes with that, combined with cutting-edge innovation in research. Their company prides themselves on the ideas of nature nurture and inner harmony and outer beauty. Now, I had never even heard of them until I read the study. In the last few years, Apple's innovation premium fell from 50% to 22%, and the company this year is no longer in the top 100. Apple might continue to change the game without jobs, but investors have voted with their feet. And Google's Alphabet is also ranking lower and is now listed as number 79. Salesforce, by the way, which had been number 1 on the innovative companies the last 3 years, fell to number 3. But what's also great about this is if we were sitting here showing this to our students, what does this mean? There are innovative companies all over the world in all different types of industries that need bright, innovative students, the students graduating from UT Dallas. This means there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of different kinds of roles that we can play, and that global and cultural issues do matter in the way we train our students. So let's just do a little deeper dive into Naver, another company that I hadn't heard of before I read this 2018 report. It's ranked number 9. It has 30 million daily users. It's South Korea's top search engine, and its focus is not on the desktop, but rather phones in people's pockets, cars, city streets, and shops. They aim to connect people with each other, shopping, and entertainment. And to do so, Naver relies on its innovation strategy. It has a sustained R&D of AI, artificial intelligence, robotics, mobility, and other future technology trends. Naver invests a quarter of its revenue on R&D. That makes it the second most innovative company in South Korea, and it ranks number 4 as the most innovative communication services company in the world. It is only behind Electronic Arts, International Game Systems, and Capcom, all gaming developers and distributors. Of Naver's 15,000 plus employees, which is about the size of LinkedIn, they had more than a third of the employees in roles in R&D. This knowledge leader aims to make its user experience immersive. It hosts celebrity-studded live broadcasts where users can post live comments as well as chats using their personalized 3D avatars. Naver's fastest growing business is content focused. It's a platform for digital comics called Webtoon. It's home to more than 2,000 original web comic series and has more than 50 million users worldwide. And Naver is getting users involved too. They've created a Webtoon community for creators that helps them publish, promote their own animated stories, build audiences, and actually earn money. And that's what we mean by that innovation DNA, that we can see that in the next 3 to 5 years, they'll be doing things that will be game changers for the way we interact and work inside this world. So innovators really just have two key objectives, or what we call in education, learning objectives. One is a desire to change the status quo and challenge it. And secondly, to take smart risks to make that change happen. In sum, innovation is an investment in yourself, in others, in your organization from top to bottom. So to teach different, we as faculty, learners, staff, and administrators must act different and so think different. Being creative has an emotional impact. It feels exciting, energizing, gratifying both psychologically and emotionally. To innovate ideas is not merely a function of the mind, but also a function of behaviors. It's all about the to-dos, our actions. And if we change our behaviors, we can improve our impact. We can see and then show those results. The big idea here is changing behaviors changes outcomes. Education and training have historically focused on cognitive skills, or what is termed associational thinking. But the good news is that the behavioral skills, how we act, of questioning, observing, networking, and experimenting are completely teachable. So let's take a look at these teachable, knowable skills. Association, it's about adjacent possibilities, making connections across seemingly unrelated questions. It really is the metaphor of the bookshelf pictured here. Who hasn't gone to the library and found exactly what they needed, 2 books to the left or 1 shelf down, or had a conversation where an idea percolated another idea that led to a result or a discovery? Historically, the results of associational thinking across a culture are well documented. For example, the Renaissance coined the Medici effect, or the dot-com boom in Silicon Valley. We can also see it in the way our brain works. Current studies in neuroscience are just beginning to document the brain and its connections, that it's not just one part of the brain working, but a triggering of neural networks across all parts of the brain that strengthen over time. Questioning. To question is to strip away prejudices, preconceptions, prior assumptions, what I call 3 Ps. Or as the poet T.S. Eliot wrote, to know the place for the first time. Are we asking the right questions? I'll share an example. This goes back to my love of storytelling. I was in my class right after Storm Sandy, and I divided the class into 2 sections, and they each had a question they had to answer. The first question, was Storm Sandy a weather phenomena? The second group had to answer the question, was the Storm Sandy symptomatic of global warming? I let them go off for about 15 minutes to discuss this. It became a very heated, very dynamic discussion. By asking 2 different questions, I got 2 very different answers, and my students were able to share those ideas, and those sharing of ideas ended up leading to different conclusions and also showing them how complex it is to look at phenomena that is in fact systems oriented or has to do with infrastructure, and many of the things that we're talking about even right now with Black Lives Matter about systemic infrastructure. Real motivation is always based on questioning. For example, at Google, employees spend about 20% of their time on discovery activities, or 1 day per week. There's an understanding that it takes time to discover, and they give them that time, that mistakes are nothing to be ashamed of, and most importantly, that we don't know what we don't know. I often ask, why don't people ask more questions? By that I mean, why don't my students ask more questions? There is a social dynamic between the students that often overrides our desire as teachers to implement Socratic questioning. I've done this survey many times with classrooms, and 3 top answers are by students: I don't want to look stupid, I'm unwilling to appear uncooperative, and it's safer to stay quiet. Well, this really has nothing to do with the teacher or the subject matter, but it does have everything to do with the community or the environment that we're creating in that classroom and the permissions that students give themselves or don't give themselves according to how they feel that they appear to their peers and to their teachers. These are things that we can change and we can talk about by bringing them to light in any classroom. Questions reveal things, the hows or the causes, the what ifs, what we call constraints, the why nots, how do we eliminate those constraints? By asking questions, we see patterns, insights. It reveals our assumptions, our biases. It forces us to challenge the status quo. It makes us generate emotional responses. And most importantly, it allows us to see new points of view that can influence our own personal point of view. So the example I'm going to share here is, this was several years back. Bezos had an employee report that they'd gotten injured in a warehouse accident. His first question is, what happened? They said something happened at lunchtime. He said, well, why did it happen? They said, well, somebody put their lunchbox on a conveyor belt. And he said, why did they put their lunchbox on a conveyor belt? And the person said, well, he was on his lunch break and there isn't really a lunchroom in this particular warehouse. After he asked his 5 questions, what we found, why the accident occurred was that many of the warehouses that Amazon had didn't have a separate or a proprietary lunchroom for the employees. And in this case, it didn't at this warehouse. And the employee put their lunchbox on the conveyor belt. Someone accidentally started it. He reached out and his hand got hurt. So it's that deeper dive. He could have just said, have our insurance pay for it and let it go. But what they did is they went back and looked at their warehouses, and now it's one of the requirements of the Amazon warehouse to have a separate lunchroom and break room. Observing. I just love this image of Charles Darwin. It's so active, so kinesthetic. He really is the true observer, intensely watching the world around you, acquiring information from multiple senses, something we really miss when we're doing Zoom with our students. But the big game changer at many companies is noticing, is observing, noticing the client, noticing the product, noticing the culture, noticing the employees. At Tata Nana, it is the best small car in India. It's often called the people's car workaround. The Tata Nanan came out of Tata's observation of a typical rural Indian village. He was trying to understand why more people didn't have cars in India. And he noticed that most families of 4 were all on a motorcycle. I mean, all 4 were on the motorcycle. And he realized it had a lot to do with the roads and the size of cars. So he went back to his car people and he said, make a car that can work on small roads in these village areas. And they made a car that could be actually disassembled, put on a truck, and then reassembled on the spot at the village. No one bought them. Now what's wrong, he said. Well, they don't have enough money to buy the car. So he's put up another stand at the village right next to the assembly stand for loans. And then he put up a second one for insurance. And then finally a third one to teach people how to drive so that the people, the families could come to the village on that weekend, buy a car, get a loan, get insurance, and drive out of the village market home for just $2,500. He observed something that made him actually innovate and create a new product that worked for the context and the environment needed by many people in India. We are familiar with the concept déjà vu, but it's when it's reversed, it's called vujade, which is seeing something as though for the first time. Exactly what Galileo did here. He drew his observation of Venus over several nights. To capture the view of Venus led him to the idea of, or the understanding that the Earth might be rotating on an axis. Networking, but I mean complex networks, networks across boundaries and comfort and discomfort levels, not social and not resources. It's a network of serendipity. It's about rejection and diversity. When I've asked CEOs, what do you do to network? They say, well, I attend 2 conferences minimum. I've started a creative community. And many education institutions have started what we call community of practices or COPs around a passion or learning goals. The CEOs, and I've interviewed about 20 of them, seek activity or experiences outside their comfort zones. It's a type of cross-training for inspiration and for ideas. Experimenting. This madman is Thomas Alva Edison. Look at him there experimenting. As he said, "I have not failed. I have found 10,000 ways that just don't work." That's what it means to experiment, creating new experiences, piloting new ideas, exploring intellectually, experientially, hold your convictions back, lead with hypotheses. So I'm going to show a telling diagram. What was, what is, what might be. The Sony timeline. Sony had created a future via its data generated by experimentation. But when did that experimentation with the eye on the future stop for Sony? They missed out around the Walkman later because they didn't see the advent of the smartphone. They were self-absorbed. They were banking everything on the Walkman being the end-all be-all product, and without keeping their eye on the future. But there was an innovator in the wings. It was Steve Jobs, who saw the opportunity with the iPod leading to the iPhone. It means to experiment, means to tinker, to play, to test. Think of the idea in gameplay that dying is okay, a concept our students are quite comfortable with. Players do things over and over to achieve levels. It is okay. Mastery and effort are requisite to achieve new levels. Benioff at Salesforce says we have to keep moving or we'll die. It's stagnation versus adaptability. The founder says, I can't do it all. I don't have all the ideas. That isn't my job. My job is to build a culture of innovation. That's something that we try to enforce. We encourage it, we value it, we notice it, we compensate for it, we require it. Innovation is everyone's job. So for innovation to work, it's a top-down success. Let's look at the substantive measure of an innovation culture. 3 outstanding examples: a company, a school, and an individual. Pixar, it's all about the story. Pixar is well known for its animated feature films. In a 34-year span, the studio has received 15 Academy Awards for Best Animation Film. It's really never had a flop. It's a culture of collaboration. There's a free flow of ideas, constant interaction between the computer sciences and cartoon animators, and everyone is in the same building or on the same campus, much like a university. They really believe in the idea of commons, the physical building, but in addition to that, they believe in the internet commons and a cultural commons. They value highly the importance of the hallway conversation or the accidental meeting or overhearing something or observing something that you might not see in your normal little cubby. It's agility, not fragility. It's engagement with others. It's seeking resonance. Pixar is known for brutal crits, weekly brutal crits. They focus on catching mistakes early, on face-to-face debate within diverse teams and roles and levels of experience. They have a process a practice called plussing, that whenever you give response or feedback to another, first you list what's working, the yeses, and then you offer the no's, or what you could call improvements. You offer, and if you give an improvement, if you suggest something needs improvement, you need to offer a suggestion or solution for that improvement so that the project will no longer have weaknesses, but will actually get better. When teaching my students, I call this process the 3 F's. You need to fail early, and if you feel you're failing, go get feedback from others, and then fix it. And you can fix it as frequently as needed. It's an iterative process for encouraging smart and early risk-taking without shame or blame. Because failure isn't really a bad thing, it's just when it happens in the process. NOCCA, a different type of high school located in Louisiana. It's led by Kyle Wedberg. He's both the president and CEO. There are no chairs, and I don't mean chairs of departments, I mean physical chairs. There are no long lectures. There's no hefty textbooks. There's no tedious exercises. But the school has a vision to create an educational community that nurtures and challenges young people to become more curious, to be kind, to be empathetic, engaged, and willing to grapple with complex problems in order to create a just, sustainable, and joyful world. It's a culture of learn by doing. Students are grouped by levels of expertise, not age or gender or background. The emphasis is not on scorekeeping or GPAs or percentiles. It's about gut, rigor, perseverance, resilience. They leave the students with an understanding of what it means to practice skills, which in turn leads to proficiency, fluency, and mastery. They talk about developing, struggle, fail, try again, coping with complexity, connecting ideas, bridging disciplines, all to improve, improve, improve. Arez Lieberman Aiden, a Renaissance man. Look at this. There's Baylor, Harvard, Google, MIT, University of Massachusetts, all of those organizations taking credit for Arez's work. He uses mathematical and computational approaches. He looks through the lease of data at all forms of evolution through mutation and selection, including the evolution of networks and languages, for instance, in the Google book. He used the use and disuse of words and relationships to describe cultural phenomena and belief systems. All the Ivy League colleges in the US would like to lay claim to some part of Lieberman's work. Boredom is the warning sign for Lieberman. It's his trigger. His innovation strategy is to work on one big project accompanied by several small, doable projects. He says he does this for tempo and pacing, that tackling projects that have longevity and complexity, he needs to have side projects that move at a little bit faster speed to keep him to keep that grit and resilience and that longevity commitment that's necessary. It's really about a culture of ideas leading to wonder and invention. And he said this fascination with wonder and invention started a child with his own father. He's what universities should have, people who are just broadly creative and able to be effective in many different fields. He takes a long time to think and he goes for a very big project, a very big idea. It's listening to your gut, your inner voice. When you don't know what to do, get still, very still until you know what to do. Letting your internal motivation be the driver. Get beyond the logical, the linear, and rules-based thinking to empathetic purposefulness. Innovation is a joyous process. So in practice, what does this look like for teaching and learning with innovation skills? It's something that I've been working on the last 7 to 8 years. It's small teams. It's moving from a fear of judgment to self-efficacy. The rediscovery of creative confidence we all had as children. Taking these principles for innovative success as a point of departure, I consider most educators to be innovators whose success is based on innovative practices. But often you get stuck teaching just your subject matter expertise and forget to share all the practices that led you to be that famous person you are, doing research, writing books, publishing novels, putting op-ed articles in the newspapers. So is our role then as educators and teachers to foster guided mastery, to show the steps to integrating our cultural innovation skills into our practice in the classroom. How can we do that? We can intervene. We can perform, model, devise challenges for our classes, our teams, our cohorts, and design stretch projects that put in effort. We can develop knowledge and skills that lead to proficiency and flexibility, what we would call in education competency skills. And we can promote our students' independence, teach them to have self-initiative, self-motivation, self-empowerment. There are many good models available for innovative design thinking that are used both in creative arts and in science programs and even in the liberal arts. IDEO is one of them. It's part of the D School at Stanford, provides a template for creative or innovative processes in small teams. This process follows a set of guidelines that evoke clear outcomes measured by emotional successes that incorporate the teachable and cognitive skills I've just recently discussed. Start with baby steps. You don't have to do all of this the first day or the first semester. You might just start with questions that build trust and familiarity for small focus group discussions or for your breakout rooms in Zoom. And then later on, push the students into experiential projects that stretch the normal boundaries, that have no known solutions, and then ask for more. Change up the tempo frequently. Surprise your students. Give them real-world problem solving. And look for the delight and energized feelings within the class. Listen for the ahas and the breathiness. The LinkedIn Learning Higher Ed team took this MetaSkills quiz. I often give this quiz to my students as well. The results of this team at work are we are only as innovative as the sum of our parts. You see, there's only one learner here and only one dreamer, several observers, a couple of makers, and across the board, they were all highly engaged in feelings, which is ultimately great for a team that interacts with the customers, the end users, every single moment of every day. The illustrated interview is a great first day challenge for a course, a way to build community, to engage, to share. In the data viz course that I teach at Art Center College of Design, this challenge not only allowed us to introduce ourselves visually and virtually, but to each other, and to demonstrate that the journalistic interview is a form of data collection that can be visualized with drawing skills. When I see stagnation, I give my students a challenge, a problem to solve by the next class, by the end of class, in 45 minutes. I want them to know that innovation is everyone's job, that disruption is part of the portfolio in my class, and that in teams of 3, small risks pursued in small, organized, innovative projects is going to be the norm. The Draw Toast Challenge created by Tom Wujcik introduces the concept of systems thinking, how we work individually, how we work modularly, and in groups. And yes, it takes more time. It's thinking drawing. It introduces the concept of links and nodes and how we connect ideas to come up with better processes, better systems design, better end user experiences. Challenges are fun. For me, in my class, challenges are high stakes grades. You either get an A or an F for a challenge. It's different than a project grade, which follows the norms. It must first and foremost demonstrate innovation and creativity. It's an opportunity to try something, to take a risk, to move into that new area. Students learn quickly that challenges increase their agility, open their minds to new points of view, and that the only real fail is not to try at all. It requires numerous skills: analysis of problems, creation of a plan, paying attention to the details, delegating tasks, using self-discipline, making and having better communication skills with others, and remaining adaptable and flexible. In fact, even by the end of 3 hours, you might have a human color wheel out in the campus quad where the president and the dean of the school notice it, call the newspaper, and you're in the newspaper by the end of the day. But most importantly, for my students, they see that they get a lot of feedback when they work innovatively and that they love the sense of surprise and joy and the rewards that it brings. So when we go back to companies, why do they want innovation? Because it makes them have better and bigger return on investment. And so one of the things we need to think about in education is that as we teach subject matter expertise, are we also teaching our students these innovation skills? Because as you can see, 43% of the top CEOs believe it's a priority ranking. It only ranks after return on investment, which means we want and need our students, our learners, our employees to think deeply, roam widely, explore a range of questions, approach life from many different angles, to go from self-containment to porous borders that result in the creation of interdisciplinary centers whose focus are wicked challenges that can only be confronted by collaboration. And what better place to do that than at a campus? So higher ed's challenge, our challenge, is that our current basic organizing principle is around academic divisions and or business departments. And the need is to move from fields of expertise and self-containment to porous borders and adjacent possibilities across disciplines. Yes, the idea of commons is the underlying principle that what we share benefits the entire community. So what does a learning commons look like? It becomes an intellectual commons, a set of bylaws that puts these cognitive and teachable innovation skills into practice in all aspects of teaching and learning at a campus like yours at UT Dallas. The most successful, innovative, creative learners are the ones who learn to educate themselves. This idea makes innovation possible. These learners share across teams and organizations. They recognize the value of mastery. They advocate for smart risk-taking that brings great rewards and return on investment. They're ready as students to go out into that world, out into that future. So your call to action is create great problem solvers. Understand learning and innovation is creating a blend of different problem-solving behaviors like collaboration, problem identification, applying information, maintaining discipline and focus, breaking rules, inventing new approaches. Treat mistakes with curiosity, share responsibility for outcomes. The result, students and faculty freely express themselves, their thoughts and ideas without fear of social retribution. It's an environment created through innovation, interaction, and psychological safety. The rewards are great. When we and our students exceed expectations, we feel that our work, our research, our learning is exciting, energizing, gratifying, engaging, empowering. All really good feelings, making me feel good saying it. These rewards are indeed valuable. The takeaway is really the sense of possibility, the teachable moment, that we can change the world, that we can do it, and we can do it now. So that's really the conclusion. I do want to give you some exercises that you might want to do in your own teams or amongst yourselves. I mean, we're all living in COVID. I wanted to address that this is a time of disruption. And some of the things that I'm seeing at different schools are actually looking at disruptive ideas for educators to consider during the time of COVID. It's our new normal. And what's great about disruption is if you've ever had a commute to a business or to your work, you're sort of on automatic pilot. But if an accident occurs, a disruption, all of a sudden you wake up and see it differently and you look for new solutions. And so one of the things I'm suggesting to you is during this time of COVID at your campus, you're all sensing this great disruption. Think about new ways of looking at the way you do education and new ways that your whole campus is working as an institution and as an infrastructure. A quick exercise you can do, and I've done it with many, is to talk about the top 10 things you want your school to be. Give yourself about 10 minutes to do that. Top 10 skills you want your students to exit with for an entry-level professional practice. And really come up with 4 or 5 guiding principles, especially during this time of COVID, for the role of the teacher. I've created 4 that I use in my classroom. 1 is safety and well-being. 2 is start all decision-making with facts. 3 is to align all my communication to the school guidelines and what my role and purpose is in that classroom. And finally, to ensure academic continuity, create value in how I teach and learn and work with my students. And because I work for LinkedIn Learning and I have that super cool title of Education Innovation Advisor, which was actually created for me by Linda Wyman herself, I wanted to share with you some of the great learning what we call learning pathways that we've created right now that will help you probably in the fall. We have moving your class online quickly, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. Number 3 on campuses right now is supporting mental health, how we communicate during times of change, and a old standby but great standby is the professional soft skills that every student should exit with before they go out into the workplace. So thank you all. I'm going to now go and go out of my presentation and back to being a person. I think, do I just click here to there? I think I'm back. Am I back?
No, Lori, it looks like we don't have your video feed. Are you able to turn your camera back on?
Oh, you know, it turned me off. That's okay. Now we know why I'm off. My camera, my video feed went off, but now I'm back on, guys. You can see me.
There we go.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lori.
And the slides should be down, correct? And again, I apologize for the dogs, but this is life in the time of COVID. I could write a whole book on life in the time of COVID.
So this is a time we have a few minutes left. If anyone would like to submit a question for Lori, just to kind of talk about some of her previous experiences or get her insight or input on what she's seeing. We've gotten not a question, but a statement just acknowledging a really good presentation. So excellent presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Makes me feel good. I love feedback. I didn't even talk about that. You cannot give students enough feedback right now. One of the things I learned in spring was they're really, because of the Zoom experience, they're really dying for more feedback. So when you're considering your fall classes, what you're going to do synchronously, asynchronously, consider, meeting all together, meeting in small groups of 3 to 5, doing breakout rooms, and even consider, I did it with my class, every 2 weeks I promised them they could have a one-on-one for 15 to 30 minutes with me. Now I have a small class, that's not possible for all of you, but you can make those TAs work for you, or in my case, sometimes I assign what I call mini-me's. I'll say, these 3 groups need to meet because I wanted to create a sense of community. So I'll take 3 students. Well, I tell them that they're my perfect students for the week and that they have to meet with a cohort. And then the next week, it's 3 new perfect students that have to meet with that cohort. And it's a really good way to get them to keep working together, because I noticed that people started working very individually with Zoom, thinking they just had to dial in with just me and not the community.
So while we have some questions coming in, I wanted to go ahead and say that, first of all, in response to one of the questions that just came in, we will be distributing a set of the PowerPoint as well as a recording that will be available also. So for those attending, you will be receiving those. So thank you for that question. I had that on my list to go ahead and mention here at the end. I also, there's another question that has come in though. You mentioned a lot of Pixar strategies that relied on interpersonal physical interaction. Do you know how they've adjusted to the new realities?
Yeah, I didn't. You probably were surprised. I really didn't get into too much technology working for a tech company. I wanted you to get into strategies rather than thinking the tool is the solution. But I'm using something, for me, Zoom is not, it's a great tool for visually seeing people, but it's not a great tool for visually seeing works in progress. And a lot of us do works in progress. You might have an essay has 5 different revisions. I'm using a tool called mural.co. It's used widely at Art Center, and basically it's this giant whiteboard, and I give every student 4,000 by 2,000 pixels where week by week they put up what they're working on. It's open 24/7 to me and the whole classroom, and it becomes this giant crit board, much like I would have in my interaction design team at LinkedIn Learning, where we could see what everybody's working on, and we can continuously give feedback. What's great about mural.com is the person I open up my Zoom room and use the audio, but we all go onto the website to see the big giant crit board. And then if I can choose a leader, and that zooms them into their part where they can discuss what they're doing, and then we can all in real time give feedback through post-it notes, comments, URLs. And so you can add movies, websites, all kinds of things. So if you're looking for a more multi-sensory experience in addition to Zoom, I would say that's really great. The second thing that I'm doing is
let me go ahead and mention there that Zoom is not an option on our campus as a standard. Teams.
Sorry,
that's okay.
I teach at USC and Art Center. We're using Zoom. At LinkedIn, we use Teams as well. Sorry. So if I say Zoom, I'm really talking about any web conferencing. Sorry on that one.
That's okay.
Mea culpa. Another thing is that I've taught all my students how to connect their cell phone, and you can use your phone as a way to show 3-dimensional things, to walk around a room, to walk around a project, to walk around an experience, to take them outdoors. All you do is you make your phone be one of the for the teacher, you can make your phone be an attendee. So you have your thing set up, but you sign up as an outside student, and then instead of having the phone do your face, you have it face out towards the world. And so that way you can walk down a street and still be in your team class. It's super cool.
Yeah.
But it also, I found I've sculpture teachers, cinema teachers, all dance teachers all coming to me. And this is a really great way for students. They put their little cell phone on a tripod and then they can do a dance in the living room. They can show how they set up a shot for the cinema shoot, how they set up a special effect. There's lots of things that we do that are still 3D. I even think sometimes, for me, I teach a design pedagogy class and I like to see how my students would react with students. So we're doing, I'm allowed to teach outdoors at USC. So the student is doing a project and 2 students pretend to be the students, and I set up a camera so that the other students can see how that person is interacting with students at that thing. And we're doing it all outside. You have hot weather in Texas. You can do some of this fun stuff too. I think I think I'm seeing really creative things. I'm very lucky to be able to see so many schools and some of the cool things they're doing right now.
Well, that question also was specific to if you have any insight on what Pixar has kind of done as far as their strategies on dealing with the new realities.
Well, I forgot to say before that, mural.co is used by all the big tech companies and entertainment companies. And so I learned about it through my professional networks before I used it and I didn't even think of it as a teaching tool until we got into having to do web conferencing all the time, and I was really missing that ability to share. So that's what people are using right now, because it lets a team share all of the projects that they're working on, and they can still have those weekly crits that way.
Okay.
Oh, just to say mural.co is free to educators. UT can get it free.
Free is always good.
I think that's a really important thing.
It absolutely is.
And it's also there's another competitor. I think theirs is called like Mirage or something. I mean, they're all got M words, but there's several of those brainstorming, creative visual collaboration tools out there. But Mural's making it free to a teacher and a team of students to use in a classroom.
We've got a couple of minutes left, and here's a really good question to see if you can answer it in about 30 seconds to a minute. But what is the biggest challenge that prevents innovation that you experienced?
I think it's that we all learn to be teachers from our own teachers. And I was telling Amanda the other day when I got my first teaching job full-time, tenure track, I went to my first meeting of the teachers and all we talked about was space and budgets. We didn't talk anything about teaching. The sculptor people were arguing with the ceramics people, and the design people wanted more rooms and the drawing people needed more rooms, and no one talked about what we were doing in the classroom. I think one of the good things about this disruption right now is teachers are talking to each other about how they're doing it. I see more if you're all teaching like Design 101 or English 101, teachers are sitting down talking about what those benchmarks are. But the biggest disruption is when I was at Columbia working with them, they were all teaching their subject matter very, very well, but they weren't teaching what they weren't teaching what they knew. How did you get your first National Science Foundation grant? How did you get an editor to publish a book? Who edits your book? Oh, I have 2 go-to people. In your English class that you teach, do you have your students have 2 people read their paper before they turn it into you? Well, no, I never thought about that. But you just told me to have your 5 New York Times bestseller books that you have 2 people that always 2 trusted people read your book before you send it to your editor. So we worked on her classroom and we came up with a way where every student before they turned into paper had to have 2 other people read a paper before it was turned into her. And at the end of the semester, she said, she wrote me an email. She said, I'm so excited. Guess what they asked me? Can I have a 3rd outside person outside the class be a go-to person? So she started this thing of the go-to feedback. Always get feedback from 2 other people before you turn in a paper. And then I loved her idea so much. Now I use it in my own design classes. My students all have to have 2 people look at their project before they turn it into me, which means what? Instead of me being the only one whose eyes are on all the projects, they now end up throughout the semester getting 9 to 20 different people giving them feedback. And one of the most important things I learned in LinkedIn Learning is how to give critical feedback. Not just how to do stuff, but how to share ideas and projects so that all of us can rise.
So with that, we are at the top of the hour, Lori, and we're going to go ahead and wrap things up. I do want to note that Amanda had posted in our Q&A section the link. If you have not activated your LinkedIn Learning course yet, you have. There's a link there. You could also get to the login page through the McDermott Library site, as they're the ones that offer LinkedIn Learning to us as a service. I also want to thank again our sponsors, our co-sponsors for this, our Center for Teaching and Learning and the McDermott Library. Thank you very much for helping to support this and helping to market this and get the word out to our faculty members here on campus. And with that, we will go ahead and end the session. And thank you so very much for your time, Lori, and to the attendees as well.
Yeah, feel free to email me, and I put the link to your LinkedIn Learning portal as well in the deck. So when you get the deck, it's one of the last slides. Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Thank
Stay
you.
cool. Stay safe.
Bye-bye.